I was born in 1981 to an affluent and well off upper middle class family in Nairobi. My parents, elder sister, and I were living as part of a joint family along with my father's brother's family, which included his two sons and his wife. I am the last born on my father's side of the family. My childhood was extremely happy since my parents had a child after 9 years, a boy at that, which was an added bonus. Since my uncle's family was expanding, his sons were adults and they were getting married. They moved out in the early 1990s after my eldest cousin got married. I don't have any photos as such of that time, but I came across some of our trip to Egypt as a family in 1990, if I'm not wrong. I've just stuck them here for you to see what my family was like. In mid 1993, when I was 12 years old, my mother fell terribly ill and passed away on Christmas Day of the same year due to stomach cancer. She was 48 years old at the time. My family was devastated, but life must go on. My life took a total turn, U turn for that matter, at the time. My daily schedule was simply too much for a 13-year-old. Going from an only son who was spoiled by his mother and father to having competition from another boy, my cousin's son. Every day I'd wake up and be picked up by my uncle and cousin and dropped to school. My father would stay back at home, getting the house clean, etc. Because as if you've been watching my videos, you know that in an Indian family, they trust a local with their whole family to drive them somewhere, but wouldn't trust them with more than a month's salary in cash to go deposit in a bank. There are a lot of rhetorics over here which don't make sense right now, but they used to be part of the norm when I was growing up. Having spent time in prison has made me change my opinion on that drastically. So back to then, I get picked up from school for lunch, dropped back to school. I don't know why I was supposed to come home to have lunch. And then after school, I'd go to my cousin's, my uncle's house, where I'd spend the whole evening, do my homework, etc. Till my dad would come for dinner at about 7, have a lot of drinks, alcohol, eat, and then get home around 10ish. My father started drinking heavily, but I've learned that that was just the beginning. That was a tip of the iceberg. At the end of 1995, my father was convinced by family and friends that he should get married again, enter my stepmother. In December of 1995, I was introduced to her. Went out for dinner, I think twice, and later my father asked me if I was okay with him marrying her. At the time, I said yes, but looking back, is one meeting enough for someone to accept another person in the place of a loved one that they lost 3 odd years ago? Remember, I was only 14, 15 years old at the time. She had come to Kenya from the UK where she was living and working. That was in 1995, December. And in February of 1996, my father flew to the UK and got married to her. I wasn't even invited, but my elder sister, who was studying in the UK at the time, attended her father's wedding. I stayed with my uncle's family for the duration, as I always did, when my dad went out of town or whatever happened. When the newly married couple came back to Kenya, life was okay. I mean, okayish for a while. I know it's bad to talk about the departed, but I need to get some facts clear over here, and I like to state them. I wouldn't like to be judged for them. She was a divorcee, and my father should have gotten to know more about her past before jumping off the cliff. You see, my father, the family, nor anyone had expected what came next. First of all, she was a terrible cook, not comparing, but she was a terrible cook. The family knew that she used to drink alcohol, but didn't know that she had an issue with booze. At times, she'd come to pick me up from school when she was drunk. Finally, she loved to fight when drunk. There started off many small spats between my father and her. And they started by the end of the year. My stepmother and father would get drunk and fight almost every weekend, if not every weekend. Fights that would turn physical. I witnessed many of these fights and never saw my father lift a finger first. And the only times he did so was to either protect himself or to restrain my stepmother for doing more harm to him or herself. These fights were over trivial things like my father giving me 50 shillings to buy fries at school over break, or why my father wouldn't pay the bill at a restaurant for a meal that they had been invited to, or we had been invited to as a family by my stepmother's brother. These fights were the norm, and they would end up calling, as in calling the extended family to come resolve their issues, and they would all come and try and separate them, intervene in the wee hours of the morning. But again, looking back at the extended family situation, after the first three, four fights, they were not interested. Rather, they were just coming for the entertainment. That's what I look at it today. I'm not being rude, but that's what I look at it as today. Here, I wish my father had divorced her, but he was so scared of what society would say. Alimony, and my stepmother didn't want to leave because she didn't have to work anymore. She used to work in the UK. She used to earn a living in the UK. I understand that she was a secretary, etc. In Kenya, she could go out and play golf all day, go out for coffee, meet up with family, etc., friends. Fun fact, I never celebrated my 16th or 17th birthdays because of fights between them. One nasty fight happened soon after my 18th birthday when my dad gave me the keys to his car after I got my driving license to drive. And she didn't like that, saying I was too young and immature to drive them around or whatever. Though her nieces and nephews, who are almost the same age as me, were all allowed to drive, etc. Double standards. I wanted to give you a backstory of what I went through so that you know what kind of person was involved in my life and what led to my future decision. But I'm not substantiating what I did. I only want you to understand my later reasoning because of what I've gone through. I met my ex-wife, Nimisha, at a bar in Nairobi, Gypsies. I know, how could I marry a girl I met in a bar? We were both on the rebound and started dating a couple of days after meeting. She came from an Indian family that was middle class. Her father worked for a company in Nairobi. Nimisha was a hairdresser and an insurance agent. Her mother was a housewife, and her elder sister was already married and had a child by then or was expecting. She was married to a friend of mine as well. So we met through friends of friends of friends. We dated for 4-ish years, and then she started putting pressure on me that we should get married or call off the relationship. Around this time, it was her 23rd birthday, and I was about 24. And I threw a huge surprise party for her and invited everyone we knew, family, friends, etc. But my stepmother refused to attend. We never hid our relationship from society. I didn't have any reason to. One day I brought up the topic with my dad about getting married, and he said just give it time because things, as usual, were not good between him and my stepmother. Nimisha kept on nagging me about the issue of marriage for a couple of weeks. And finally, I decided to broach the issue with my uncle, my dad's elder brother, who we worked together with, and his wife, my aunt. They're also the eldest in the family, so they have some say in matters like this. Nimisha and I took them out for dinner one Sunday evening, and they accepted, but told us that convincing my stepmother wouldn't be an easy task. But they tried. One evening, out of the blue, my aunt called and asked me if my stepmother and dad were at home. I confirmed in the affirmative, and she told me to simply go out for a couple of hours. It was about 7 p.m. And I did so. I mean, I didn't have the guts to say no to my aunt. I stayed out till about 10:30 p.m. waiting for a call that I can come back home, but I didn't. So I just decided to go home at 10:30, and I saw my entire family. My uncle, his wife, my cousin, his wife, my sister, my brother-in-law, and one of my nephews. They were all arguing in the living room with my stepmother. My dad was sitting in a corner, quietly. The issue was about me getting married, obviously. And my stepmother had been told by the entire family that either she accepts or dad divorces her. She finally relented. We got engaged in 2006 and married in 2007. That was the last word. I got everything. Settling down after marriage in a joint family, as in dad is, my stepmom, Nimisha and I, wasn't easy. Everyone had their own opinions about everything. And poor dad was stuck in the middle. A couple of months after getting married, Nimisha told me, it's either we move out, build another house in dad's compound, which is pretty big, or we break off the marriage. We chose the first and we moved out. Dad was lonely, unhappy, because it seemed like my stepmom had won and he had lost his son. So he somehow came and convinced Nimisha and I to move back in, which we did. And we promised that he'd build us another house very, very soon, but we'd say use the same kitchen for meals. A week after moving back, Nimisha and my stepmother had a huge fight on a Saturday afternoon when neither dad or I were at home. When I got home late in the evening, I saw Nimisha had packed her bags and she told me one sentence: this house isn't big for your stepmother and me. You know what to do. It was said in Gujarati, but this is the literal translation. This weighed heavily on me. I tried talking to dad about it, but he was devastated because my elder sister was also going through a divorce at this point. So he was totally confused at why are things upside down. And this was because my ex-brother-in-law used to hit my sister. And now the alcohol had gotten out of hand for everyone. In June 2008, Nimisha's words started haunting me. And I kept on remembering every way I had felt bad when my stepmother had drawn my family and I. A week before the incident, I had a huge fight with my stepmother about how I had left a wet towel on my bed and I lost it. I didn't go home for 2 days, staying drunk. I worked on Kirinyaga Road, which isn't known for being the friendliest part of Nairobi. And I'd gotten to know some dubious people. So I talked to them about what could be done to eliminate my stepmother. And hatched a plan for the Saturday, the 5th of July, 2008. On the 4th of July, I went out after work and didn't go home the whole night. Nor did I go to work on Saturday, the 5th of July. Instead, I went on a drinking binge where, from what I can remember, I had two full bottles of whiskey in that span of 24 hours to get the courage. The person I had spoken to had told me he could get the people ready within an hour to do the job. So I called him on the Saturday afternoon and told him I was ready. He told me to call him back in an hour, which I did. At the same time, I was still getting more drunk. I learned while studying law that drinking before carrying out a crime is called gaining or getting Dutchman's courage because it's something one wouldn't be able to do when sober, even if they had thought about or planned the event when sober. I I drove to town and picked up the two men. I could not recognize them today if I were to meet them. I told them what was to be done, agreed on a price of 40,000 shillings. I took them home. No, sorry. First, I took them to a supermarket to buy what they needed. And after that, I took them home, where I was surprised to see my father's car, along with my stepmother's car, in the parking lot. I reiterated to them that they should not touch my father, and they accepted. The biggest mistake of my life. I should have seen the presence of my father's car as a red flag. But I said earlier on, I was drunk. The watchman opened the gate and I let them into the house. I opened the door for them and I waited in the veranda. Well, the kitchen cum veranda. They came back after 10 minutes. The longest 8 to 10 minutes of my life. And simply nodded at me. We left. I had no idea that they'd killed both my father and stepmother. I paid them and dropped them off. After that, I went to pick up my my wife, Nimisha, who had agreed we'd go out for dinner, and told her what I'd done. And she agreed to back me up. So we went home and discovered reality. We were both arrested, but she was released after a couple of days. I went to prison for 14 years. If you're looking at me narrating this story without any emotions, it's because they, along with the tears associated with a loss, dried up a long time ago. Prison makes one lose emotions. If Nimisha, my ex-wife, or your family ever see this, I just have one question for you. I now know you are a gold digger, but you should have simply said and asked and taken what you wanted rather than do all of this. But in the end, more than anyone else, I blame myself. Nani Latanji, I hope you're well wherever you are. I'm sorry for what I did. But as I know, some mistakes are too big to be fixed by a simple sorry.